Good afternoon, my name is Madison Dwyer, my partner is Lauren Moses, and today I will be discussing our plan, that the Supreme Court of the United States should rule that the death penalty is unconstitutional. 1 AC Inherency, Contention 1. The death penalty is being administered now. The federal government resumed executions this summer despite countless complaints and objections, Associated Press 714. The government carried out its first execution in almost 2 decades over the objection of victims' relatives. Critics argued it was shameful to carry out this execution during a pandemic. Executions will increase because the federal death penalty can be triggered by 60 different offenses, and the DOJ is intervening to take over state cases, say Jura 19. Many assumptions about capital punishment are that it targets terrorists. That is absurd. In federal death penalty cases, you will find trauma, mental illness, and junk science. In the Federal Death Penalty Act, 60 new offenses became punishable by death. Now, any murder involving additional felonies is fair game. Evidence of racism became unmistakable. Moving on to 1AC advantage, racism. The death penalty is a historic descendant of lynching. It's a racist system of punishment that devalues Black life. Racial terror lynchings gave way to executions. 2/3 of people executed in the 1930s were Black. The Supreme Court upheld Georgia's racial bias in the death penalty. The court accepted that racial bias is an inevitable part of our criminal justice system. 75% of executions were in cases with white victims. People killing white victims are 17 times more likely to be executed than those killing Black victims. The death penalty mirrors racial violence. The statistics confirm the history. The death penalty is disproportionately used against people of color. This is compounded by executions of innocent people, say Jura and Smith 19. The disproportionate punishment of defendants of color is one of the defining historical characteristics. The death penalty appears to be more racially biased than ever. People of color sentenced to death has grown 75%. The problem can't be corrected. The death penalty is inherently racist weapon of the state, only wholesale abolition solves. McDonald 7-6. Capital punishment empowers the government to lawfully take human life. The slow motion killing is played out in courtrooms where a Black defendant is nearly 4 times more likely to face the death penalty than a white person charged with the same crime. All violence is possible when racism is tolerated. Ethics are meaningless without a prior rejection of it, Memmi 2000. To accept the racist universe is to endorse fear, injustice, and violence. One cannot found a moral order, let alone a legislative order, on racism, because racism signifies the exclusion of the other. In short, the refusal of racism is to live in peace. 1AC advantage, 2, dignity. Capital punishment is morally indefensible. Its torture causes trauma to anyone connected to the trial and systematically debases humanity, Besler 19. Capital charges inflict severe trauma and torture. State-sanctioned killing mutates into a depressing, degrading torture. The rest of the civilized world has renounced it as torture. It must be rejected in all forms. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights have turned away from capital punishment. Death sentences and executions should be declared unlawful under American and international law and classified as torture. The death penalty is unacceptable in all instances because every human life has value. Death is irreversible and steals the opportunity for improving, Davis 19. Executions never result in justice. With a human life on the line, the government can no longer risk executing the wrong person in the name of justice. Wrongful convictions, junk science, false confessions, and bad lawyering have forced hundreds of people into wrongful imprisonment. At least a wrongfully imprisoned person has the potential to be set free. Death steals that opportunity. Numerous studies conclude you cannot teach a society that killing is wrong by killing. The government should recognize that human life is valuable. Prioritize ethics, the violation of human dignity, and moral disengagement at the heart of the death penalty are the same that facilitates genocide and the cleansing of the world of those deemed unsafe, Johnson 18. Death row confinement violates integrity of a human being by treating him as if he were a mere animal. When prospective victims are dehumanized, conditions foster institutional violence, and they bear no responsibility for moral responsibility. Indeed, capital punishment killed the offender twice, once on death row and once again in the death chamber. Capital punishment involves torture. Any justification must therefore include justification for torturing. It is the abomination of a prisoner's humanity that completes moral argument in opposition of capital punishment. The last contention is solvency. Only a complete abolition of the death penalty can remedy the state's racist murder of innocents, Besler 16. The U.S. Supreme Court can say no more state-sanctioned killing. The court's failure to address the death penalty has disserved Americans. The Death Penalty Information Center cites study after study that killers of whites are much more likely to be sentenced to death than killers of blacks. Such discrimination calls for a remedy, and the only remedy that will suffice is the death penalty's abolition. Supreme Court action is key. Ruling the death penalty unconstitutional creates a precedent that spills over and injects dignity into the entire justice system, Besler 17. The judicial abolition of the death penalty could very well be a giant step forward towards the full promise of dignity, and will demonstrate the dignity's imperative force in the modern era. By declaring the death penalty unconstitutional, the court will bring a long-awaited coherence to the dignity doctrine. Thank you.